Whatever NLC decides to do with the protests, if NLC will protest, then they must take note of what I'm about to say, because it is crucial. Several persons from several quarters are advising that NLC calls off the protests or the strike, whichever technical terms you want to call it, and they are citing security threats or security concerns as reasons for asking NLC to call off the strike or call off the protest. Now, what NLC must understand is this: if NLC calls off the strike, then NLC's integrity, whatever is left of it, is gone forever. That's one. And if NLC does decide to proceed with the protest, then NLC must take the following actions or take the following steps to prevent an infiltration of the protest. Because the same people who are citing security risk as reason for asking NLC to call off the protest are likely going to be the same persons who will go and hire thugs, give them 500 naira, 1,000 naira, buy them some alcohol, and then push them, unleash them on the peaceful protest of the NLC. These same people. Now, what can NLC or what must NLC do to prevent this from happening? NLC must do this. As they go out on this peaceful protest, you must go strategically. Everybody must not go the same. You must have a lead team and you must have a lag team. A lead team will be a group of persons that will go ahead. They will be like scouts. They are the ones that will be able to spot any group of persons that are coming. Those will be the lead group. Then there will be, or there needs to be, a lag group. A group of persons that will be coming after the main procession of the protests. These will serve as early warning system for any groups that want to infiltrate the peaceful protests. Now, peaceful protest is the fundamental rights of every human being on earth, not just Nigerians. So we are entitled to it and no court can stop it. So if we're going on this peaceful protest, we need to take adequate precautions to make sure that, number one, the protest remains peaceful, and number two, that the lives of the supporters of the protest, the lives of the Nigerian workers, the lives of the Nigerian citizens are protected at all costs from any form of loss. Now, the police ordinarily are supposed to provide this protection, but in the event that we don't get this protection from the Nigerian police or the DSS or whatever security architecture, we must take steps to provide this security ourselves. And how do you do this? The NLC must make sure that across all the locations of the protest, they must go with drones, multiple drones. And once the lead team or the lag team gives any signal, the drones must be unleashed into the air to capture in real time any untoward activity that may be deployed by the enemies of Nigeria, enemies of peaceful protest, to disrupt the protest. This is urgent. The NLC must do this so that what NLC will start as a good thing will not be made to look like it is a bad thing. The intention of these enemies of Nigeria is to turn what should ordinarily be a peaceful protest into a violent one or a bloody one, where innocent lives will be lost. We cannot sacrifice the right to protest on the altar of the need for peace. We cannot. It is the responsibility of the security agencies to provide security for protesters to protest. So the security agencies must do their job. But in the event that the security agencies fail to do their job, as we have seen in time past, then the responsibility is on NLC and the TUC to provide such security by providing drones. Provide drones. See, we cannot rely on cameramen. We cannot rely on handheld phones, because when these people begin to unleash their mayhem, when they begin to shoot in some cases, Nobody will stand to hold camera and be pointing camera at them. But if the drones are in the air, if you have spy cameras hidden in secret locations that they don't know, we can capture these things and beam the action live to the world, so that what happened in Lekki Toll Gate, where they switched off the CCTV camera and switched off the light, will not happen again. We will have a protest, and if anybody dares to disrupt it, we will have concrete evidence that chaos cannot disrupt. The NLC must do this, because the NLC should go on this protest to show to the Nigerian government, to show to the National Assembly, to show to the executive, to show to the judiciary that indeed ultimate sovereignty rests with the people of Nigeria, that indeed the Constitution is supreme and nobody should ride roughshod over it and get away with it. The NLC needs to do this protest. Number one, to protect the integrity of Nigeria and to protect whatever is left of the integrity of the NLC and the TUC. NLC and indeed all Nigerians must understand that the real enemy here is actually the IMF and the World Bank. And they have infiltrated our government, they have infiltrated the executive, they have infiltrated the National Assembly, they possibly have infiltrated the judiciary. They have designed a system that they are implementing to take over the sovereignty of Nigeria. And unfortunately, certain persons in power are dancing to their tunes. So if Nigeria must be free from the whims and caprices of the IMF, hiding behind the scenes to unleash this suffering upon Nigerians, then the NLC must go on this strike. Because that is the only way to defend the integrity, to defend the sovereignty of Nigeria. Certain persons in government, whether in the executive, whether in the legislature or in the judiciary, have been compromised by this IMF and World Bank system. They have been compromised. So you hear them. Just imagine the kind of debates that goes on in the National Assembly. Imagine the kinds of statements that certain persons in the executives make. These statements, when you observe and analyze them, you just see through it that these persons are just playing to the tune of the IMF and the World Bank. And they think they are being used, they think they are smart, but they don't know that their actions are actually apparent to all. Nigerians may not talk, but it doesn't mean that they don't know. So the only way to actually defend the sovereignty of Nigeria is for the Nigerian masses, the Nigerian workers, the Nigerian citizens to come out and protest. Many people say that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. No, the judiciary is not the last hope of the common man. We actually have the device, the tool of protest. Many people are calling and saying, oh, the future of Nigeria depends on the judiciary. The future of Nigeria does not depend on the judiciary. The future of Nigeria depends on the people. And Nigerians must come out in this protest to make their voices heard. It is the protest that will show to the judiciary that they must do the right thing. If the judiciary decides to sell out Nigeria, the Nigerian people must not resign their case to fate. They must stand up and defend the integrity of and the sovereignty of Nigeria. So the judiciary is not the last hope. The future of Nigeria does not depend on the judiciary. The judiciary must be made to do the right thing by the Constitution and by the people of Nigeria. Once they know this, then they will do the right thing. If they see themselves as the last hope, if they see themselves as the custodian of the future of Nigeria, then they can do and undo and misbehave and then lead Nigeria in the path of destruction to the dictates, to the desires of the IMF and the World Bank. We must not allow this. That is why this protest is absolutely crucial. To send a message to people who are lovers of impunity, people who like to disregard the rule of law, people who like to disregard the principle of separation of powers, the principle of checks and balances, to send a message to those people that indeed the powers of government may be on them, but the ultimate power of sovereignty is with the people. And if they choose to misuse and abuse the powers that the Nigerian state has bestowed on them, the Nigerian people will rise up to defend the constitution and to defend the sovereignty of Nigeria. We must do this because our elected politicians, they appear to be selling us out. And it is easy for them to do so because it is easy for the IMF and the World Bank, with their very deep pockets, with their very big military powers and their guns, to what do you call it now? To force them under duress to do the biddings of the IMF and the World Bank. But when we, the people, rise up, it is impossible and it's difficult for the IMF to have their way. That is why we must rise up and do this protest. And we must also resist every attempt by the IMF or their agents to infiltrate this protest and make it into a bloody or a violent one. It is a peaceful protest that is intended to send a strong message to the Tinubu administration, to the DSS, to the judiciary, to the legislature, that they must abide to the rule of law. They must respect the rule of law. They must respect the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. They must recognize that ultimate power rests with the people and that the primary responsibility of government is the welfare and security of the people, and therefore not make life more difficult for them. They are calling for Nigerians to have understanding, to bear with them, but they are enjoying. They are buying bulletproof cars and to protect themselves from the consequence of their policies, which are intended to make lives more difficult for Nigerians. How unfair can any group of leaders be? It is imperative that the NLC goes on this strike to defend the sovereignty of Nigeria. Imperative. And of course, to ensure that the protest goes as planned, they must take the advice that I have outlined in this video. The Nigerian people will be free from the whims and caprices of the IMF and the World Bank and the World Trade Organizations. The Nigerian people will be free from the leaders that are bent on selling the citizens of Nigeria and indeed the citizens of Africa out to the IMF and the World Bank in any guise.